my husband fell at one point, and immediately they were like, you know what? You guys should come and play with the baby tigers, because they were worried that that tiger was going to kick into predator mode and attack. Good morning, Reptilians. Welcome back to my channel. So today I wanted to do a video all about my pet peeves. I've done a few more educational videos over the last few Sundays, and I just kind of wanted to sit down and do something more fun, I guess. Disclaimer, I am the least controversial person in existence, and just making this video makes me nervous, but it's all in good fun. I'm sure I do things that absolutely irritate some of you guys to no end, and we all just have pet peeves when it comes to everything, so I thought I would just make a video about it. So please don't hate me after this. Just keep in mind that I know that there's different ways to do things, especially when it comes to the reptile community. Everyone kind of has their own way of doing things, and we all just kind of do what works for us and for our animals. So just know that I'm not singling anyone out. It's not supposed to be that kind of video. It's just more of things that irritate me personally. Really quick, Zaz is going up and down. She's going crazy today. So a bearded dragon appearing and disappearing off my shoulder, that's why. Alright, the first one should come as no secret to you guys. I talk about it all the time in every setup video, and every video always. It is a lack of enrichment in reptile enclosures and in fish enclosures too. Just for animals. Just lack of enrichment for animals. More specifically, this is seen a lot in rack systems. I'm not saying that I have anything against rack systems. I think that they can be absolutely wonderful if they are done correctly. Like I always say, look at Snake Discovery's rack systems. Hers are absolutely fantastic. She provides substrate and leaves and rocks and hides in the racks and the water bowl, and she provides everything in a rack system. And when they're done like that, I think they're absolutely wonderful. I would not be opposed to having that sort of rack system at all. But a vast majority of people that keep things like snakes in rack systems don't give them anything. It's just a newspaper and a water dish, and that's it. And I don't like that at all. Animals get bored. Animals like to do things, even though we think of them as, I guess, simple creatures. They still like to do things. If that animal was in the wild, it would be out exploring and burrowing or hiding or climbing or whatever that animal may do. So it drives me absolutely crazy when I see animals in rack systems with nothing at all, because for lack of better words, it's like a little prison for them, and I don't like it. Now, obviously, I'm not talking here about things like newly hatched babies or people that are breeding animals. If you only are going to have that animal for a few weeks and then it's sent off, then it kind of becomes less realistic to give every single animal enrichment. I completely understand that. But I'm talking about adult animals that you've had for years, or animals that you are keeping solely as pets that you plan on having for years. Those animals need something to do. That one drives me absolutely crazy, and is probably my biggest pet peeve of all. Next up is calci sand. Like, why? Why are they still selling calci sand? Obviously, some animals are supposed to be on sand, but calci sand is completely different than just normal play sand. Just like it sounds, it is sand that has calcium in it. And what happens is, if you have an animal for any reason at all that is sick or is lacking in nutrients for some reason, they can then start eating that sand. And these are the sands you see in places like Petco, PetSmart that are always brightly colored. They're blue, purple, pink, orange, whatever. Those sands are obviously not natural sand. So the animal eats it and it gets stuck because they are not equipped to digest sand like that, and they become impacted and they become very sick. Impaction can be very, very serious. It could cause your animal to have surgery or even die. So calci sand is one of my biggest pet peeves. Every single time I go to Petco, PetSmart to buy supplies, it drives me insane to see calci sand still on the shelves, and sometimes even seeing calci sand in their little setups, their display setups where they're selling animals, because having bright purple sand in a leopard gecko tank is then showing someone that might be buying a leopard gecko today that that is perfectly okay, and it is not. Calci sand is never, ever, ever the answer, and it drives me crazy. Not reptile related, but definitely pet related. keeping betta fish in those tiny, tiny, tiny tanks. This one also completely blows me away. Again, going to Petco, PetSmart, they sell little bitty 1 gallon or even just half-gallon tanks that are marketed towards betta fish. Betta fish are wonderful, personality-filled fish that want to use space that you give them. They're going to use plants. They're going to lay on plants. They swim around and they play. They even have been known to play with little moss balls, and keeping them in a tiny little tank without heat or filtration or anything like that is just so cruel and terrible. I know some people think that betta fish just live in little ponds and that they don't need anything bigger, but in the wild, betta fish live in shallow water, yes, but it's shallow water that has a massive area, so they do have room to swim. They need filtration, they need heat. These guys are from Asia, from countries like Thailand. Thailand is hot. We went there a few years back for vacation, and it was so hot that our camera lens couldn't even take pictures because it just kept fogging over repeatedly. I've never been that hot in my entire life. It was like an actual sauna. Absolutely loved it, but it was hot. So they need heat and they need filtration. They are a living creature and they are going to produce waste. Even though it is a very small amount, they still produce it, so they need that filtration. Betta fish need more than a half-gallon or a 1-gallon tank, and they certainly need more than just a fish bowl. People buying animals that they're not prepared for. Now, this one is a little bit tricky because when we talk about impulse buying, which is what I'm talking about here, people seem to have two different definitions of impulse buying. Some people think that if you haven't prepared for an animal for a really long time, then you are impulse buying. I don't necessarily agree with that. What I mean by that is I feel like impulse buying is more, let's say you go to Repticon and you see an animal and you're like, what is that thing? And then you just buy it and you know nothing about it. And then you have this animal home and you don't have anything for it. To me, that's impulse buying. That is buying an animal that you're not prepared for. On the other hand, if you go to a reptile show, and let's say that you have kept other colubrids and you happen upon a gorgeous king snake and you want it, but you haven't done any research about it, and you sit there and you may look up really quickly what they need, but you've cared for other colubrids before and you have the means right at this moment to get all the things for it, and you go around and you get all those things, or you go home and you already have all those things for it. To me, that doesn't count as impulse buying because technically you are prepared for that animal, even if that preparation is happening now. Not the ideal situation, but that just doesn't bother me because you are taking the necessary steps to properly care for that animal. Like I said, what I'm talking about here is when you go and you buy an animal and you bring it home and then you're just like, now what? You don't have a tank, or maybe you don't have lighting, you haven't read about the animal at all, not even a quick Google search at a reptile show, nothing. This happens a lot. I do get messages of, I have this animal, now what? And it makes me panic, and I will sit there and list everything out for people because I panic and I feel bad for that animal. Please don't do that. At least do a little research. At least know what you have to get to make sure that you're going to be able to get everything for it. And then you get into things like bearded dragons or your mastics, things that need a large amount of UV lighting. And if you aren't prepared for that animal and you don't know that they need UV lighting, and maybe you don't look it up, maybe just grab what the first person you talk to tells you to buy and they don't mention UV lighting, you could potentially damage that animal for the rest of its life because you aren't prepared for it. So that drives me crazy too. Just prepare for an animal before you get it. Even if it's just a little bit of preparation, just be prepared. When people get animals and they don't want to take them to the vet. Now, I'm not saying that you need to take your ball python into the vet every month to get it checkups, but it's so irritating to me when a person gets an animal and they know that they never have the intention of taking that animal to the vet ever, no matter what. If your animal gets sick, you might have to take them to the vet. If you get a bearded dragon and they're not eating and they're acting lethargic, they might have parasites and they have to be treated by a vet. They have to get medicine to flush those parasites, or else they essentially are starving to death even if they're eating. And it makes me super sad, but it happens. And yeah, I know people all the time in the pet tube community and on Twitter, they're always saying if you can't afford the vet, you can't afford the pet. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. If you can't afford to take your animal to the vet, then please don't get that animal. Quick side note here, Obviously not sponsored, this is a huge company, but whenever I have an emergency vet visit and I didn't plan for it in finances, I always use CareCredit. CareCredit is a credit card that you can use at vets and human dentist offices and eye doctors and things like that. And it is a credit card, but in a worst case scenario, we originally got it a long time ago when our dog got very, very injured and had to have emergency surgery. And we didn't have the money at the time, and we got CareCredit and we were able to pay for it. And we've had that card for about 7 years now. So definitely look into that if you think that you have no other options in terms of paying for the vet for your animal. But yeah, it's just kind of irritating to me when someone gets an animal and they ask for advice and they're just like, no, I'm not going to take that animal to the vet. Please know that that might be something that you have to do one day if you get an animal. When people put their furry animals like dogs and cats with their reptiles. This is something that happens all the time on those super cute viral videos. Yes, it's cute. I know that it is super adorable when it happens, and just because that cat was petting that bearded dragon doesn't mean that anything bad happened, but it can. It can go terribly wrong. Animals like cats are predators. They have a prey drive, and just because everything is going fine at that second doesn't mean that bearded dragon might not make a sudden movement and be attacked by that cat. A couple of stories here. My rescue leopard gecko Winter did come from a situation where he used to have brothers and sisters in separate tanks, I'm assuming, but they used to be there, and the lady that had him before left. That cat killed 2 of the leopard geckos that were with Winter, so those leopard geckos are gone just because that cat had the opportunity. Another example here, which is a little more drastic, going back to that Thailand trip when me and my husband went, we were playing with juvenile tigers, and juvenile tigers are huge. They are Great Dane size with a lot more muscle, and we were playing with them, and at one point my husband fell. We had these huge sticks and they had like huge cat toys at the end, and you're just kind of shaking them around, and these giant tigers are leaping through the air and attacking this and just having the best time of their lives. But my husband fell at one point, and immediately they were like, you know what, you guys should come and play with the baby tigers. Just get out of here for a second, because they were worried that that tiger was going to kick into predator mode and attack. Because, I mean, again, these are tigers, but these were tigers that we were feeding and petting and walking and playing with. But that 1 second, that one mistake could have ended terribly. So just know that predators do have that prey drive, and even if everything's going good at that second, something bad could happen. And I don't know about you, but I would not want to risk that. And the last one that I can think of at this second is when people cohab animals. Now, some reptiles are fine cohabbing. That's just something that they could do, but some definitely are not. Specifically, when we look at bearded dragons, again, we're always looking at bearded dragons. When we look at those, there are always posts on Facebook and Craigslist, things like that, where people are cohabbing their bearded dragons, and it's another situation where they think it's super cute because they think these animals are cuddling because one bearded dragon is on top of another, but really they are fighting for resources. They are passive aggressively fighting for resources, and I have seen so many times where someone will be rehoming bearded dragons. They're like, these have to go together because they're bonded, but you can clearly see one is fat and happy and healthy, and the other is whittling away because it's not getting resources. Another Craigslist example, I saw someone rehoming blue-tongued skinks, a male and a female blue-tongued skink, and they said that they had to go together, and they had repurposed a trunk, like a trunk where you would keep shoes, into a blue-tongued skink tank, and it looked really cool, but both blue-tongued skinks were in that tank together, and I'm pretty sure it was probably less than a 40-gallon tank size. Way too small for 2 animals, and those animals are not supposed to be together. If you have ever seen blue-tongued skinks breed, you know that it is aggressive. It is so aggressively terrifying. So those 2 animals should not ever, ever, ever be cohabbed together, and it's another thing that drives me crazy. It makes me mad and sad and so many emotions. And this can even be extended into cohabbing different species of animals, because people will do that as well. A big culprit of this is people putting hermit crabs with things, because hermit crabs will hide and be on the ground and they think it's okay. Again, on Twitter today, I think it was, someone posted a picture of someone rehoming a crested gecko and a hermit crab together in the same tank, which is another huge yikes. Cohabbing animals is a huge pet peeve of mine as well. And I think I said the last one was the last one, but this is the last one. And this is a very small one that just kind of irks me every time I hear it. And that is when people are rehoming animals and they use the term getting rid of. That's pretty self-explanatory. It just irks me a little bit because it sounds more like they are trying to move out furniture or old clothes that they don't want anymore, and they just say, I'm getting rid of this animal. I don't know, that's probably me just being crazy, but that one kind of irritates me every time I hear it. I like the words rehoming or relocating, or just, I can no longer care for this animal, I'm looking for a new home. But getting rid of has always just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I don't know. But that is it for this week, guys. Please don't be mad at me. Again, I'm not saying that I'm going to dislike you if you do any of these things. These are just things that irritate me personally, and we all have things that irritate us personally. Again, I probably do things that irritate you, and that is okay. Let me know in the comments below some of your pet peeves. Please keep those comments civil. Again, we are all people just doing our best here, but let me know in the comments below what your pet peeves are, just because I am curious. But as always, if you are not already, please feel free to follow me on my other socials and like, subscribe, and hit that bell for notifications every single time I put out a new video, which is every Sunday and Wednesday. This week's Instagram shoutouts go to Combat Fish Keeper and AJ Ramirez 09 for following me on Instagram, going through like a whole bunch of stuff. Thank you guys so much. You are the bee's knees. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a fantastic day. Bye. Get it checkups, but if your animal, but it drives me, but it's so irritating.